chats, welcome back to another episode of Chat About Tay. I'm your host, Bella, and in this episode, I'm going to be chatting about episodes 3 and 4 of the End of an Era docuseries. So, we just got episodes 3 and 4 of the End of an Era docuseries, and there's a lot to talk about. And I actually took very extensive notes. Last time, I just kind of took a little bit of notes, but I took a lot of notes this time. So, episode 3 is titled Kismet, and that is obviously from the Life of a Showgirl song. There's a line that she says, I guess it was Kismet, and Kismet means like fate. So, this episode opened up with clips of Taylor performing in various capacities as a child and early on in her career. And her mom, Andrea, is talking about how she wanted to perform and sing for crowds when she was young. And then the rise to fame was very gradual. And she says, you never thought that it would become this. And this is like her career and how big she became. And so there's clips of them breaking down the set from the European leg and shipping it back to America. And it said it was going to take 6 weeks to ship everything back to America because, there's so many set pieces and all this different stuff that goes into creating the Eras tour. It makes sense it would take like that long to, ship everything back. And Taylor says she's beyond exhausted and she's excited that they have a 4-month break until the final leg of the tour, where they're going to be playing a bit in America and then ending in Canada. And then there's clips of her band and her singers and dancers at home with their family, talking about how they're going back to their lives and talking about how much fun they had on the Eras tour, but they're happy to be back at home for a little bit and, being with their families. And then they have clips of Taylor trying on some of her new costumes and just trying on some of her other costumes as well. And she's talking about how she wanted to bring a lot of nostalgia with the costumes. And, there's elements from all the different tours and the different eras that she wanted to bring through the new costumes that she has for the Eras tour. And Joseph Cassell is her stylist, and he's been with Taylor for so long. And he's not only her stylist, but he's a big fan of her. And they both say that they work very well together. And he's just excited to be working on these costumes. And he's just happy to be contributing to the Eras tour. And then Joseph also discusses how he wanted to tie in a lot of different designers who have been with Taylor for a long time. So they have Robert Cavalli, Versace, Louboutin, just all these different designers that she's worked with throughout her career and through the different eras. They wanted to use those designers to, keep that nostalgia factor as well. And she's talking about the costumes and how much she loves all of them. And, the clothes kind of take her into a new mindset. When she's putting on the outfit, she's really, in the mindset of the Eras tour. And it kind of just like ties everything together. And then she talks a lot about the fans dressing up in her costumes and how they make all their outfits to match her and they're DIYing everything and how, fans really do connect with her through those costumes and through, their outfits that they make for the Eras tour. And her mom discusses that a little bit as well. And then they're talking about the Reputation bodysuit from the Eras tour and how many people love the outfit and that they're recreating it. And they have lots of different clips of people from like TikTok and Instagram and stuff in those outfits. Not just the Reputation bodysuit, but like all the different outfits for the tour and how people have recreated it. And they show so many different social media clips of people talking about how she's only had the one Reputation bodysuit. And she shows a little bit of clips of her trying on the gold Reputation bodysuit. And when she initially tries it on, she's not really liking it because the cups of like the boobs were like too low. The fabric was not exactly the same because apparently the fabric from the original bodysuits, like they didn't have that fabric anymore. So they had to like find a different fabric to use. And she's talking about how she's just not really, loving the fit. And she wants to like just work on it a little bit more and make it perfect before she debuts it. And then her band tour manager, they show some clips of him at his home. And he's talking about how he's been her tour manager since her Fearless tour. And his house has like all these different plaques of like all her tours and all the awards that it's won and everything. And he shows this guitar that Taylor decorated for one of his daughters for her birthday. And he said that he's been with Taylor for so long that she was around for the birth of like both of his children and that she's just such an important part of their lives. And, just working with her has been, just such a wonderful thing for him. And then Taylor discusses about being with her band and her crew for a very long time. And the band members are talking about how close they are with Taylor and that, being a part of her life and a part of this tour is just something that's really, really special. And she talks about how many of them have known her for so long and they've been with her throughout her whole career. And then she talks about how there's so many new people just through, Reputation and the Eras tour that she's met and she's worked with. And then she talks about one of her backup singers, Jocelyn, and she discusses how she got breast cancer during the Eras tour, and it was really, really hard for her, and it was really just devastating for her, but also for the tour family and for Taylor. And she said that she was flying back and forth from LA from the tours to have biopsies, and she ended up just deciding to take off some time, and she went away for 6 months to have chemo and get treatment, and she was just at home recovering and watching live streams and everything, and she was really sad to be away from everybody and be away from the tour, but she really wanted to, come back as soon as possible after she was done with her chemo. And so she came back after her treatment, and she started getting in shape right before she came back because, when you're in chemo and you're in recovery, your body kind of, you're not very active or anything. So being able to be, on stage with Taylor, her body needs to be ready just as much as her, vocal cords and everything. So she was getting in shape, and she asked, can I come back? Like, am I allowed to come back to the tour? And everybody was like, yes, we want you to come back. So everybody was so excited for her to come back. And Taylor, says that she was so happy to have her back. And it wasn't the same without her, but it was important that she got that help that she needed. And then they show some clips of Taylor in the gym, and she's training very, very intensely. She's like doing some training with these like giant like rope kind of things that she's moving around. She's doing a bunch of pull-ups, and she's talking about how she never does pull-ups in the show, and she makes jokes about how she doesn't need to do them, and it's like not really, a necessary thing because she hates doing pull-ups. But she discusses how from the 4 months that she was off from the European leg to the last leg of the tour, that she needs to get back into shape and back into the mindset and strength to perform, because this is a 3.5 hour show. It's the longest show she's ever done, and it's physically very just demanding, not just on her vocal cords and everything, but her body. And she said that she started doing training for the tour 6 months before the rehearsals started. And she said that in this 6 month time, she was on the treadmill every single day, running at the tempo of the songs and singing them out loud. And she would do that every single day to make sure that she could actually do this. So that was kind of like the prep that she was doing prior, but then she was also doing all of this gym training too. And so in those 4 months, she was doing all that training and making sure that she could, physically do this. And then she also says that she doesn't want the crowd to see her panting and, not being in shape. So she just really makes sure that she looks her best and is able to perform every night. And then she says she also runs about 8 miles throughout the course of the show every single time. So that's just a lot of training and a lot of physical ability that she needs to have. And then the crew, and when I say crew, I mean like backup singers, band members, like all kinds of people. I'm not just talking about like the sound people and stuff. So crew kind of just encompasses like everybody. That's how we'll phrase it for this episode. And so the crew is talking about leaving for their first show. They have 1 week left to prepare, and they're all getting back into practicing and prepping for the show. So the dancers are starting to practice again. The musicians are practicing, and some of them said that they had kind of been practicing like throughout the entirety of their break, just making sure that they didn't forget anything. And then Taylor is arriving in Miami for the first show, and she decides that she wants to do a little video for social media, walking around with her cat Olivia backstage. And I remember seeing that video on Instagram and TikTok, and I thought it was cool just to see how she's like, oh, I want to do this, can we do this? And she kind of like walks through like what she wants to do with the video, and then she has like her tour photographer filming the video for her. So it seems like she's not just collaborative with like the sets and the costumes and the dancing and everything, but she's also very collaborative with her team with her videos as well, which I think is really cool. And then her crew is like setting up the stage. Everyone's coming back to rehearsal. And then there's a clip of her backstage with her mom and her publicist, Tree Payne. Tree Payne has been with her since I think the 1989 era. And they're backstage on the rehearsal day, and she's just talking to them about how she really needs to get back into this mindset. And she's talking to them about the new Reputation bodysuit and how they were able to fix it. And there's a clip of her trying on the new bodysuit. She's super happy. It fits her so well, and she's just so excited to, debut that bodysuit for everybody on the tour. And then she is rehearsing for the first show. They do an entire run through of the show, and she says that she wants to treat this like it's an actual show. And so her mom is talking about how Taylor was worried that she was not going to remember all of the motions and that she was going to forget things. And her mom said, you're going to be okay. Once you get back on that stage, you're going to remember everything. You're going to be fine. You've done this so many times, and you really don't need to be worried. And then they discuss the production and like everything that's involved with the tour, and how this has to be perfect every single time. And the people backstage who are like the lighting technicians, the pyrotechnic people, all of like the tech stuff that's going on, they're all talking about how there's really, really fast cues for everything. There's this light comes on and then this fire comes on, and it's just very, very quick. And they said that they have a lot of communication backstage, and that it, is kind of like a well-oiled machine, and everybody has to do their part to make sure that these cues all go exactly where they're supposed to be. They discussed how some of the props have broken, and there's clips of the crew backstage on the soundboards and doing all of that kind of stuff. And then Taylor discusses how she really has to make sure that she's paying attention so that she doesn't fall into, a pit anywhere or fall off the stage or get set on fire. And her mom also discusses a little bit about how, if she's not paying attention, she's not on her mark, it can be dangerous, because there's a part on the stage that like lifts up and down. And so, if she's in between that, the thing is going to lift up and her leg could get caught, or she could fall over. Or if she's too far to the edge of that lift, when it goes up or down, she could fall and hurt herself. There's so much stuff that you have to pay attention to when you're on stage. And then she's talking about the wardrobe changes that she does during the stage. And then she says the wardrobe changes she has between a minute and 15 to 30 seconds to change into her costumes. So she does about 20 costume changes. They talk about how it's kind of like a NASCAR race where, the car goes into the little port and they change all the wheels and then they go off. It's kind of like what it is for her. And she says that there's 4 different changing booths underneath the stage. And I thought it was really, really cool that they had clips of her under the stage, because I like seeing the behind the scenes stuff. And obviously this is like a documentary, and I like seeing like the clips of her on stage and performing and everything. But what I really like about this documentary is that we see the stuff that we don't see like when we're watching the tour. So I thought that was super cool. They show her changing backstage underneath the stage in those different booths. She said that the costume changes are basically choreographed. They're kind of complicated. She said it's a super complicated tunnel system under there. And she said she's worried about not being able to change in time and running around. She said that she's really just panicking that whole time, and she really has to make sure that she's paying attention and being on top of everything. She discusses how one night she was changing between Evermore and Reputation, and that she actually tripped on her dress, fell down, she hurt her knee, and she basically scraped a part of her hand off. And she went on stage with her bloody hand, and that she just didn't acknowledge it at all anywhere, even on stage or after the fact, because she just didn't want anybody to know. She kind of just wanted to, like, the show's got to go on kind of thing. And then they talk about how there was like a lot of fan discussion about it online. But she was like, I'm not going to mention this because everything's fine. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I also remember seeing clips about that stuff on TikTok, and how she was hurt herself. And there were clips of like people who were like front row of the concert, like zooming in on her hand and stuff. So I remember that. And then she says after the rehearsal, she made 3 different mistakes, and she was working with the dancers to make sure that she remembered her cues and that she wants everything to be perfect. But I mean, I think for like not doing the show for 4 months, coming back, doing a rehearsal, only making 3 mistakes in 3.5 hours, that's like not bad. And all of the mistakes that she made, she remembered everything, but she just kind of wanted to like re-go over what it was. And they weren't like, huge mistakes or anything. And then they showed the day of the Miami show, and then it starts to rain, and they actually have a weather meeting backstage with like her tour manager, her dad, and a bunch of other people, and they're all discussing how the winds are about 35 miles per hour, and they're gonna do everything they can to make sure it's okay. And then she's talking about the weather. Either when the weather goes bad, it feels very exciting, or it's scary, because she talks about how there's so many shows that had bad weather, but she's not going to cancel even if it's raining, and the rain shows can be kind of magical for people. And the fans have kind of come to love the rain shows, and I think that's really cool. I remember there's been so many amazing clips and photos of her throughout her career where the shows, it was raining and she just had so much fun. And they're not going to cancel unless it's something that's like super, super bad. So the Miami show, it rains like a little bit, but the show must go on. And then she says that she doesn't like wind or lightning, and they actually have a lightning detection system as well. And then they show them going into stage to practice the Midnight Rain fall, because that was one of the 3 things that she had missed when she was doing the rehearsal. So she wanted to make sure that she practiced the fall that she does with Midnight Rain, because she's like on top of the little lift, and then she like falls down and the people catch her, and then she changes her outfit during that song. So she was really worried about not being able to do the cues, and it was totally fine. And the dancers were happy to help her, and she just, kind of shows that she's just kind of like in her head a little bit. And then she's rehearsing the surprise songs backstage, and that she says that she, really wants to rehearse the surprise songs every single night because it's kind of new to her, and she kind of just has to like think on the fly a little bit when she's like practicing everything, and it's really well rehearsed, but it's not as rehearsed as like the other parts of the show. And she doesn't want everybody to think it's just kind of like willy-nilly. And then there's clips of her getting ready, all of her dancers getting ready, the audience coming into the venue as well. And then her backup singer, Jocelyn, is talking about how she's excited to be back for the show. They're in like their little circle like huddle, and she's just talking about, you know, how excited she is to be back. And she's with she tells a story about Taylor, and how Taylor makes everybody feel good and is always thinking about the we and everything and not the me. And she just talks about how much Taylor means to her and means to everybody on the tour. And then they do a little chant before the show starts, and their chant is fuck shit up, which I love. And then they just show clips of the show starting, everybody getting ready backstage, and then those giant like fabric, like I call them fans, but those things that they like lift up and down in the intro of the Eras tour that are like it's like purple and pink and orange, like those big fans, you know, those things that they but basically the things that they're holding walking onto the stage, and then they put them down, and then they cover Taylor up, and then it goes up, and you know they reveal Taylor on the stage. Those things, I'm calling them the sunset fans. That's what I call them. There's clips of them, those people coming out with the fans on, and they're blowing all around, and because the wind is really bad, and that Taylor's like under the stage and she's being lifted up, and then they do her reveal, and then there's a lot of backstage clips of how things are working, everything being moved around throughout the show, the dancers coming in and out, and it's just really, really cool. Then they talk about the debut of the Reputation bodysuit. The crowd's going absolutely crazy. They show all these clips of fans reacting online, and I remember when that was debuted as well, and I remember freaking out about it because it's just like one of those things where Reputation was just, she always had that phrase where she said like there's no explanation, there'll just be reputation. And I kind of thought about that like with the bodysuit, like she doesn't need anything else. But I thought it was super cool for like the last leg of the tour she had this other outfit, and everybody was so excited. And then there's clips of her performing in the rain, and she said she wants to try as hard as she can to give the fans what they wanted, but the surprises sometimes are good and they can make it better. And then there's some clips of her as a child, and then that's how the episode ends. I really enjoyed that episode. I thought it was really, really cool to see a lot of like the backstage stuff, and, you know, talking about just a lot of her dancers and what she was doing throughout the break, and really showing again how much thought and care went into this tour. So I really enjoyed that episode. And then the episode 4 is called Thank You for the Lovely Bouquet. And in the beginning, it showcases her, just different clips of her recording the songs for the Tortured Poets Department. And she says that writing music is a form of therapy. And she talks about how the Tortured Poets Department was a purge of all of the bad that she had felt for 2 years. And the songs really reflect the pain that she was going through. And she says sometimes she feels not human. And she said that during that time, she felt like no one in the world was there for her. And she just used this album as a way to just get all these feelings out. And then they have her backstage before the show with her mom, talking about how when they were at one of the stadiums earlier on the tour, that her cousins were actually taking photos in front of Travis Kelce's locker backstage. And she had no idea at that time like who he was, but her cousins were like a big fan of him. And then her mom is telling the story about how Taylor met Travis, and there was a clip of him on his podcast talking about how he went to the Eras tour and that he wanted to give Taylor a friendship bracelet, but he wasn't able to, and that he said he was butthurt that he wasn't able to meet her. And her mom says that she saw some stuff on the internet about how Travis had brought a friendship bracelet to meet her and he wasn't able to meet her and everything. And Andrea, her mom, said that she wanted to know more about Travis, and she was learning more about him and just thought that the whole notion was really sweet, that he wanted to give her a gift. And she said that she wanted to set them up because he seemed just really genuine. Taylor mentions that she's not an athlete and that she thinks that they would have absolutely nothing in common. But, you know, again, her mom just thought it was really, really sweet notion that he like came to the show, he wanted to meet her, he made a friendship bracelet, like he took time to like get into like her world, with making the friendship bracelet and participating in the way that the fans do. And so her mom, I guess, was obviously successful in like setting them up. And that she said on their first date, he explained what football was to her. And now she knows a lot about it. And she's really invested in it because it's something that he loves. And, obviously that's something that they can bond over and that he can share with her. She can share music with him. And then they show clips of downtown New Orleans because that's where the next show is, and that the fans are so excited. They, decorated the town for the Eras tour. They show some rehearsals for the show, and there's a little clip of Taylor backstage with some flowers that Travis had sent her. And then they show some dance rehearsals, and then Taylor says that the dancers are so talented that they have other people who can fill in and do the same dances, and they all do them so well. And then they talk about the Ready For It dance, and it's normally an all-female cast for the Ready For It dance, but one of her dancers, Wiley, really, really, really wants to do the Ready For It dance. He said that's his favorite dance. He knows it, but he's never been able to perform it on stage because it's an all-female cast. And so her lead dancer, Amanda, has him test everything out and practice the dance, and that he's going to try on her costume and see if it works. And then she talks about how there's really no gender restrictions for the costumes and for the dancers, and she didn't really want to overthink gender because it's not really a big deal, and she wants everybody to show their expression on stage. And then one of the people from the tour goes backstage and asks Taylor if Wiley can do this dance, and they say this is his dream to do the Ready For It dance, and they're like, we have a clip, and then they show this little clip of him rehearsing in the costume, and she's like, oh my god, this is so amazing, yes, of course he can do it. And so I think that was just sweet because it was something that was obviously a really big deal to him and something that he wanted to do, and she was more than willing to like just let him come in and do something. And I think that's really cool. And I really appreciate how much Taylor has discussed, that gender or costumes and stuff like that with her dancers just don't really matter, and she's really just wants people to be comfortable and express themselves the way that they can. So I think that's just a really cool thing. And then she's practicing more of the surprise songs, and she says that the songs in general are kind of just muscle memory to her, but she's really challenging herself to do new things every night. And she says the prepping for the set for the surprise songs needs to be really, really quality. She doesn't want it to seem unrehearsed, but she really doesn't have a lot of time to prep for it. But they all have to have like a level of detail. And then she discusses how she went through 2 different breakups throughout the course of the Eras tour, and the Eras tour got her out of bed, and it was the one thing that really let her find her purpose outside of the hard stuff in her life. And then she says something to the effect of, men will let you down, but the Eras tour never will. And I thought that was really funny. I hope she does like a merch shirt with that or something, because I thought that was a really funny quote. And then her mom talks about how the songs, they all have a lot of meaning, and she talks about the different meanings of some of her songs. And then they discuss how Travis was on stage with her during one of the Torture to Poets Department sets, and so he came out during the tour at one point during the I Can Do It With a Broken Heart little skit that they do before that song, and they were just talking about how he's like a yes guy and he's really happy to just be part of the show and just do something. And that she said that she really wanted to have a lot of drama with that set, and that he was talking about, oh, I should do, that skit with you on stage. And she thought he was really joking about it, but like he genuinely wanted to do it. And then they show him rehearsing for that part, and then they show clips of him on stage, and they're just having such a good time. And she was really, really happy about it. And her mom was just talking about how happy of a person Travis is and how much joy he brings to not just the tour, but to Taylor and to like everybody. And then Wiley is talking about how he didn't really fit in anywhere, but he found dance when he was young, and it was just the best thing for him, and he was really able to gain confidence. And they show clips of him throughout the years, and he says that he didn't really fit into the standard because he likes to be masculine and feminine, and that, there wasn't really a lot of space for him to be both. And he felt like he, just didn't really fit in with anything really. He wanted to just be masculine and feminine and kind of just be himself. And he said this tour doesn't require any standardization, and he says that Taylor doesn't care about any of that, and she just wants everybody to express themselves in the way that they want to. And he just talks about how important that this tour has been for him. And then there's a clip of them telling him that he's going to be doing the Ready For It dance, and Taylor's just talking about how he was just really good for this, and that he was so happy to do it, and she was happy happy to have him in the dance as well. And then there's a clip of Sabrina Carpenter backstage, and they talk about how she was the opener for her earlier on in the tour, and that from the time that she was the opener to at this point, her career has just really, really taken off. And Taylor wants to do a surprise song with her because she was, in the area during a day off, and she invited her to come do one of the surprise songs with her. So they're backstage practicing the songs. They're doing like a little mashup of Espresso and Is It Over Now, and oh my god, what other song did they do? Maybe it was just Espresso and Is It Over Now, but they were doing like a little mashup of some of their songs. Oh, and Please Please Please, they did that one as well. So there's clips of showing Sabrina underneath the stage. Basically, a little skit they did was Taylor starts singing Espresso, and then she stops and she's like, this, I just really wish Sabrina was here. And she gets on the phone, and obviously Sabrina's like underneath the stage, and they do this little skit, and Sabrina like comes up onto the stage and they sing the song. So they had a lot of clips of them singing together, and she talks about how Sabrina is just a really great performer and how proud of her she is, and she feels really blessed to be friends with her. And I just thought that was really cool. And I liked seeing them on stage and rehearsing not just like the song, but also like the little skit that they do, because it's really funny. And then Wiley is getting prepped for his debut for Ready for It, and he's just so excited. But he really just wants to make sure that he stays humble and just not think about like the scale of like this tour, because he's going to get anxiety and a lot of fear. And he talks about how the crew is really like an extension of Taylor, and he really wants to do well for her. And so the dancers are all backstage, they're all filming him on stage, they're really, really excited for him. And he said that he was honored for Taylor to let him do this, and that she sees him as a person and celebrates him for who he is. And then they'd show a lot of clips of the different cities transforming to cater to Taylor's shows. They do a lot of decoration throughout the city, and that Indianapolis put up a giant poster of Taylor. They changed some of the street signs to different songs of hers, and everyone's just getting excited. And there's clips of people exchanging friendship bracelets, and the crew talking about just how kind Taylor is, and she wants to give people an escape from all the scariness of the world. And then her mom is backstage making some friendship bracelets. Travis is coming to the show, and he's sitting with his family. She's practicing the surprise songs. She talks about how she felt like prior to being with Travis, she wasn't really able to be present in a relationship and be on tour at the same time. But with Travis, it's different because his job is also entertaining for large crowds, and he's away a lot, and he's, kind of in a sense touring by going around to different cities to play different games. And that, entertainment is both of their passions. And she says that they fuel each other and really cheer each other on. And then Taylor talks about how she thinks it's crazy and cool that so many fans wear Travis's jersey to the concert. And she talks about how like years ago, if you told her that like her fans would be wearing football jerseys to her concerts, that she just would have never believed it. And she thinks it's really cool that the fans love him so much, and that he loves her fans, and he's comfortable with her life and understands the scale of it, and that he treats her very, very well. And she's just very happy that she found somebody who not just like cares about her, but embraces all the craziness. And that she says she thinks that the fans like him so much because of how much he loves what she does, and that he's not like afraid of it. All right, so that was the 2 episodes. I really enjoyed these 2. I think these 2 I liked a little bit more than the first 2. Obviously, I like all the episodes, but I think these episodes I liked just a little bit more. And then I am going to be watching the final show as well of the Eras Tour, the version that has the Tortured Poets department. I don't know if I'll do like an episode on that, but maybe I'll do an episode just on like my favorite parts of the Eras Tour. And again, I didn't go to the Eras Tour, but I've seen the original film, and I'm going to be watching this one as well. So maybe I'll do a little episode about my favorite parts of the Eras Tour and my favorite sets and everything. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about and hearing about the episodes 3 and 4 of the End of an Era docuseries. I'm just excited to see the next 2 episodes and to watch the final show as well. So as always, stay safe, stay classy, and I'll chat again with you soon. Bye-bye. This episode, you can find us on Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. See you there.